Hello, this is Kvitoslav with Historical Fiction, and this is part of an ongoing series that I'm doing with my friend Derek Green. We have been reading several works by Robert E. Howard and Harold Lamb, and basically producing our own videos and takes on those, kind of a buddy read overall. And this time, rather than some of the short stories, we've moved on to one of Harold Lamb's biographies. In addition to being an excellent writer of historical short story fiction, Harold Lamb was also a first-class historian who wrote on a number of different biographies and topics and so on there. And I've chosen an appropriately weather appropriate to our topic here because it's actually below zero today outside, so I've decided to use this as a good day to talk about the March of Muscovy, basically the rise of the Russian Empire, focused particularly on Ivan the Terrible there and his part in creating the Russian Empire there. This is one I've read several years ago, but I was inspired by Derek to reread it as he's read it recently and was very enthusiastic about it. So I also was enthusiastic to reread it and to see how well it holds up there. It's really excellent, like all of Harold Lamb's biographies there. Interestingly, this one it's kind of divided into, I would say, three main sections. Basically, you've got the kind of Russian Empire before Ivan the Terrible, Ivan the Terrible's life, and then the Russian Empire post Ivan the Terrible. Yeah. So the main focus obviously is on Ivan, but he provides a lot of background so that you're not looking at him in isolation there. The first half is interesting as it shows kind of the beginning of Moscow. Originally, the original Slavic Empire was actually centered on Kiev. It was Ukrainian to begin with, which is kind of the birthplace of all Eastern Slavs there, and Moscow was a bit of an offshoot later, especially after Kiev was destroyed by the Mongols. I visited Kiev many years ago, I think in 2004 or so, and it was really an interesting city. I mean, I enjoyed it quite a lot, but also it was interesting to see just how much things like Rurik's Gate and all of the historical sites had actually been reconstructed, because when the Mongols destroyed Kiev, they did their work thoroughly. They didn't leave a stone on stone, so they basically destroyed the entire city because that's what the Mongols did. So it sets up kind of the background there, and Moscow was originally just a little kind of fishing village of no significant import at that time. But later on, particularly with the split of Ukraine and Russia, Moscow became the center of the kind of Russian Empire there. And Rurik's dynasty flowed down into Ivan the Terrible, who was really, as I said, an interesting guy because Harold Lamb does a good job of kind of showing he was actually an extremely competent and educated ruler in the beginning, and kind of guided his people well, but at some point he went through what they call the change, probably centered around him accidentally, or most likely accidentally, killing his son and heir there in kind of a fit of anger, and then he went through the change, and that's where he earned his surname, the Terrible, there. And then it shows how basically his line ended, and other lines of czars, the Romanovs and so on, kind of took control of the Russian Empire there. And I said overall, it's a really excellent, in many ways depressing, but a very fulfilling read, in that you learn a lot. At least I learned a lot when I read it, because Howard Lamb is full of interesting facts and a really great writing style overall. I've made a video before on all of his biographies that I've read, that I own and have read there, and all of them are excellent. So I'll include a link to that, as well as a link to Derek's channel. And one of the things I like best about Harold Lamb is the way that he was writing in the early 20th century there, but he doesn't take the kind of standard topics that many writers of the time, he had no interest in kind of, say, English kings or Western history like that. He was very fascinated by the East. And that's what he chose his focus as topics that were, relatively unknown to Westerners there. So as you can see here, a number of biographies: Tamerlane, Alexander of Macedon, Alexander the Great, Suleiman the Magnificent, Charlemagne, one of the few kind of Western protagonists he's got there, Hannibal, Cyrus the Great, Theodora and the Emperor, one that I really want to get a hold of one day because I like everything Byzantine there. And Baber the Tiger, Genghis Khan. I said it was really interesting that he was fascinated by the East, and that was his area of choice there. It was almost as if he wasn't interested in the topics, the kind of common overdone topics there. And this one in particular, this was written in 1948, which also was an interesting time to write about the Russian Empire, because that was basically the beginning of the Cold War. So you had an American author who was detailing the Russian history there. So I think it was, I don't want to say risky there, but it showed, in a way, just how kind of open-minded he was and how interested he was in more obscure topics. So that's March on Muscovy. It's actually a really great companion piece to this one, which is The March of the Barbarians, another one by Harold Lamb, which details the rise of Genghis Khan. This is actually a good kind of companion piece because the Mongols kind of bleed into the Russian conquest there. So this one was actually Howard Andrew Jones' favorite of Harold Lamb's biographies there. So it's another recommend as well there. And so definitely, March of Muscovy, excellent read as any biography by Harold Lamb. And I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to go inside now because it's actually a bit cold. So thanks for watching. Goodbye.